This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast for Monday, June 24th, 2013. I'm Bryan Houston, and we are talking about the Texas Rangers right now with Rattle and Hum Sports contributor Dic Humphrey. How you doing, Dic?
I'm doing fine.
And so are the Texas Rangers. A sweep of the St. Louis Cardinals in the wee hours of the morning this morning. Last week at this time, we had the Rangers maybe dead and buried, and suddenly they've risen like zombies and vampires here. They've come back to life.
It is amazing. And when we had this conversation last Monday, the Rangers had gone 1-6 the week before, playing two teams that were under 500. This week they went 6-1, playing two teams that were in first place when we played them.
How do you explain the turnaround?
Amazing how this can turn around,
right,
and how quickly it can turn around.
How do you explain the turnaround?
Well, we said last week the problem was the offense. And Kinsler was back. He had gone 0 for 8 last weekend when he came back on Saturday and Sunday. He started hitting the ball. He had a hit in every one of the A's games, and suddenly we're getting him on with some regularity at the top of the order. And Mitch Moreland came back this weekend, and even without Lance Berkman, because we didn't have the designated hitter, the offense clicked enough. It's still not going great guns. They only scored 12 runs in 3 games. It's not just a ton, but it was enough to win 3 games.
Talk about, I guess, the big bat in the lineup right now. That would be Nelson Cruz, who is just scorching it right now.
No doubt about it. He had, I think, 5 RBIs for the series and a hit in every game. And don't forget Martin Perez. He's on a 9-game hitting streak where he's hit more than, I think, 419 over that span. So getting some good production from him.
Brzezinski also comes back with a hot bat.
No question. He got that 2-run home run Saturday night after the Rangers had gotten down early in the game, and he put him back on top. And he's hitting the ball well. So we've already mentioned 4 guys that are hitting the ball pretty well, and Moreland contributed. That's 5, and the Rangers get Berkman back because that was the end of National League Park baseball for interleague games this week. All the rest of the interleague games will be in Arlington, and the DH will be used. So that's the end of the pitchers batting.
Well, I know they're glad to get that. I know they're glad to get that Cardinals series out of the way, and that's why they sat around for almost 3 hours last night waiting for the weather to clear so they could get it in and not have to worry about trying to find a place for this game later. I have to ask you about something. As a guy that's followed baseball for many, many years, it strikes me as amazing that not only are we talking about bats heating up, but about where people hit in the lineup and how much of a difference it seems to make. Elvis Andrus, for instance, doesn't seem to feel comfortable being a leadoff hitter. He responds to hitting second. Cruz really making a move now that he's moved into the 3rd slot. What is it about where you hit in the lineup that can make such a difference to some of these guys?
Well, that's a question that we could probably both make a lot of money if we had a good answer for it. I do think in Cruz's situation that he's just hot, and it doesn't matter where he's batting in the batting order right now. Andrus, though, he always has been better in that number 2 spot where he can bunt for some hits, especially with a runner on in front of him. And it seems, because of the threat of the bunt, particularly with a runner on base, I think he rolls a few hits through the infield that because the third baseman at least is playing in closer, but he definitely seems to hit better in that number 2 spot than he does at 1.
And what about Cruz? What's the difference in your approach when you're hitting 3rd in the lineup as opposed to when you're batting 5th in the lineup?
Well, you'd think you'd want your best base runner between those two batters batting third, so you wouldn't jam up the bases in front of the hitters. Other than that, the 3, 4, 5 hitters and often 6 hitters are pretty much interchangeable. You're looking for guys that can hit, hopefully with some average, but have some power and can really drive some people in after they've gotten on up at the top of the order.
I know too that that Wash right now is going to leave him at the number 3 spot for the time being, but that means then that he's got 4 straight left-handed bats in the lineup, one right after the other.
He did have that configuration Saturday and Sunday, and certainly was vulnerable to a left-handed reliever late in the game. And that only got worse when Craig Gentry was put on the disabled list yesterday. Angel Beltre was called up, but he's another left-handed hitting outfielder to go along with Murphy and Leonis Martin. So the Rangers just have to be looking for a right-handed bat out there to help them.
Some other things that we celebrate over the weekend, the fact that Nick Tepesch bounced back and pitched a great game against Adam Wainwright on Sunday night, and a much-needed big ball game, too.
Well, when they decided to go with Martin Perez and go ahead and call him up, they were able to push everybody back. We talked about Darvish is going to go a whole week between starts, and Tepesch got the extra day. He went 6 days. It sure seemed to improve his performance yesterday or last night, or even early this morning. I'm not sure he was still pitching past midnight, but close to it. That was a long game.
Do you think with Tepesch and Grimm, it was more a case of being physically tired and hitting the wall, or are they just kind of mentally worn out at this point?
Well, we're looking at Darvish with a really bad start last time out, and he hasn't won for 6 straight starts. So I think it's everybody can use a little extra rest from time to time. And this stretch was certainly a tiring stretch of 20 straight games on the schedule for all of the players. But it is, to me, it is certainly an encouraging sign to see them finish so strong over that stretch, rather than look just worn out, and especially finishing on the road so strong, too. So hopefully they'll be refreshed with their day off. But the pitching was just outstanding all 3 games, and Martin Perez was really unbelievable, and he got high compliments from Pierzynski and from Washington after that game. And if he can make a contribution like this rotation may be pretty good, period, whether they get outside help or not. And you hear commentators all the time say, well, they've got to do something about the starting pitching, but they're ranked second in the league in ERA this morning, and certainly that bullpen is shaping up nicely. How about Joe Nathan? 4 straight days that he's thrown and earned a save, and 5 out of 7, and he was really sharp Saturday night. Which the third of those 4 straight days. So, and no matter what you say, he's got 25 saves and 26 opportunities, and that's a heck of a nice record.
Oh, absolutely. He does make it interesting from time to time, but boy, when it's all said and done, it's all about results, and he is putting up some big-time numbers right now at the most important position as far as the bullpen's concerned. Talking about the day off, again, they waited so long to try to get this game in because they were desperate to keep that day off today. How big a difference does that make for this ball club right now?
Well, one other factor was that they have a family road trip every year, and this was the family trip. And for many of these players, they had family, wives, girlfriends, children, whatnot, already in New York. And they sure didn't want to be staying over and playing the likelihood, if it had been rained out last night, would have been to play today. Neither team was scheduled today. They sure didn't want to spend that off day in St. Louis playing another game while their families were running around in New York. So they definitely pressed to get that game in last night. And the way it turned out, I'm sure the Rangers are glad that they did get it in.
Now talk about, you mentioned it earlier, Craig Gentry going on the 15-day DL. What kind of problem does that cause for the Rangers right now?
Well, actually, Beltre may even be a better defender in the outfield. So defensively, if the reports are true, I don't see a drop-off there. The problem, and then Beltre can run. I'm not sure it's the plus speed of Gentry, but I don't see much of a drop-off there. The big drop-off, though, is just what we talked about earlier. That outfield is so left-handed now, and they're just very vulnerable to left-handed, particularly left-handed relievers late in the game.
Have to ask you too about the fact that the Rangers go 9-11 during a 20 games and 20-day stretch, which doesn't look all that great. But when you put 3 out of 4 wins against Oakland and then you sweep the Cardinals, that's pretty amazing when you think about the injuries and the 6-game losing streak and all. The way they've rebounded against the level of competition is kind of startling.
It really is. As we talked about a week ago on our podcast, they were 1-6 the previous week, and this week they're 6-1. And boy, that's a heck of a way to play 500 ball for 2 weeks. But, particularly with the quality of the competition. But it was certainly a marvelous weekend for the team. This was really, for the fans, probably the most attractive weekend road trip on the schedule this year. And there were certainly a lot of Ranger fans in St. Louis this weekend. I went up Friday morning and came back Sunday afternoon, and at least a third of the plane were people that were wearing Ranger garb and were there to watch games. So it was really exciting to see the fans following the team to Missouri this weekend like they did.
It is an incredible scene going to a Cardinals baseball game, isn't it?
No question. The ballpark is really a nice ballpark. It was my first time to be there, and it was just the in-game production. You noticed immediately it's livelier. It involves a lot of people. Friday night there were 2 choirs down there, more than 100 people, and one of them sang "God Bless America," and one of them sang the Star Spangled Banner. And it just seemed like they had a host of people throwing out the first pitch, and it just smacked of community involvement all over, and they did an outstanding job of that in-game production during at the stadium.
Okay, now we've got the day off on Monday, and then there are 3 games against the New York Yankees in New York, followed by a weekend set of 3 games against the Cincinnati Reds. Talk a little bit about those matchups.
Well, 2 very good teams again. It's the 3rd straight series. The Rangers will be facing a team that's in first place. The Yankees have the best record in the American League, and the Reds are certainly the chief challenger for the Cardinals in the National League Central. And perhaps a little bit disappointing. I think a lot of people felt like the Reds would be the team that would really be the team to beat the Central, and that may still happen. So the Rangers definitely have their hands full this weekend, or all week, with both of these series. But they look like they're playing some very good ball to go face those 2 teams too. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for a good outcome.
Nice to see Lance Berkman be able to get back into the lineup. He's had a little time off now and probably needed that rest as well. So what kind of difference should he make in the lineup?
Well, it's certainly a better bat than the pitcher that we've seen over the weekend. I think collectively the pitchers went 0 for 19 with 11 strikeouts and 2 walks in these interleague games. So if Lance Berkman just even gets a hit, he's going to be doing better than what Ranger fans have been seeing from these pitchers in National League Park. So it's got to be an upgrade. He didn't appear even as a pinch hitter over the weekend, so he had a little 3-day vacation of his own.
And then the best part of this whole thing is that the Rangers are back in first place in the American League West.
No question. After losing 3 out of 4 to us, Oakland proceeded to lose 2 out of 3 over the weekend, and the Rangers now have a full 1-game lead and actually have a 2-game lead in the loss column. So hopefully for Ranger fans, they will be in first place to stay. But it sure looks to me like it's a 2-team race. They're still not seeing much out of the Angels, and they're 10 or 11 guys. I think they've fallen behind Seattle, and I'm not sure they've got the pitching that they can put together the winning streak to get back into this thing. And the halfway point of the season will be here in the next week or so. So it looks like a 2-team race in the West at this point in time.
All right, I want to ask you about something else here. On the 27th, it's going to be the 40th anniversary of David Clyde's appearance in a Texas Rangers uniform, basically in a game that a lot of people feel saved the franchise. You're one of the few people around that probably remembers very vividly what this whole situation was like. What are your memories of David Clyde pitching just a matter of weeks out of high school after being a phenom in Houston and coming in and pitching for the Rangers against the Minnesota Twins on that June day back in 1973?
Well, I was there. I was at the game.
Wow.
And it was the first sellout in the history of the franchise. They did not sell out a single game in 1972, the first year they moved here. It was really a pretty bad ball club. I mean, there was no question about it when they got here. And that was a lot of it, that they knew by drafting David Clyde, they'd have some local interest. Certainly being from, I think Houston Stratford was the high school he graduated from. The crowd was so huge, and the traffic problems were so big that I recall the games time being delayed 15 minutes to try to get more fans into the stands because of all the traffic and parking problems. And Ron Luciano was the home plate umpire, and probably a very good umpire for a youngster like that, probably a fair strike level. He was certainly a colorful character as an umpire, but every pitch it had the feel of what we now know as playoff baseball. I mean, every pitch people were groaning if it was a ball and excited if it was a strike, and he at one point in time had a bases loaded situation with no outs and got out of it and completed those 5 innings. And I think it was Bill Gogolewski that pitched the last 4 and recorded the save. But it was definitely an exciting game, and one that a memory that I've always cherished, being there that day.
It's such a sad story, though, that he had such an incredible can't-miss future coming out of Westchester, and then got thrown in way too soon. And Whitey Herzog and company all wanted to see him sent down to the minor leagues, and then his career ended way too short. I had the opportunity to talk to him last year and did an interview with him. The amazing thing I find about David Clyde is that he doesn't sound the least bit bitter or angry about what happened, which is pretty incredible when you think about it.
No question. It certainly ended up costing him a lot of money in his life, and made a big difference to what his life would be after baseball by not having much of a baseball career. And but sometimes these things happen, and I'm not sure Billy Martin, who replaced Herzog, was the best fit for David Clyde either. That might have been part of the problem later on. But certainly a shame. And I forgot, you're right, it was Westchester High School, same school district as Stratford, but it was Westchester. So
my understanding too is he's 37 days short of big league service to be able to collect his pension. Wouldn't it be? I think, don't the Rangers owe him 37 days somewhere in their organization to be able to allow him to get his pension?
Well, it's always been a head scratcher why they haven't figured out some way to make that happen, and I have no answer for that. I've seen statistics like that. I think that 37 days is the correct number, and you'd think they could have figured out something in all these years to get that for him, but I don't hear of any move to try to make it happen.
That's really a shame because it sure seems like the Rangers owe him that because who knows what would have happened to this franchise had they not had that sellout back in June of '73, you know, because Bob Short was out of cash, and there's no telling what might have happened to this franchise.
Oh, no question. And they certainly, you know, seemed to get them on the road the next year. They were actually fairly competitive the next year in 1974.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Sundberg was a rookie, and they were in a pennant race for a couple of years there. But you know, there was no question that franchise was running on fumes. Bob Short, in retrospect, it looked like his game plan was get the team out of Washington, and he was hoping he could line up some local buyers that would overpay for what he had, just for the prestige of being a Major League Baseball owner. And he looked like he was ready to get out of baseball and cash in the chips from the beginning. So
and he didn't do
it wasn't a very well-run franchise.
No, and he didn't do the Rangers fans any favors when he sold the thing to Brad Corbett, did he?
Well, he was certainly an interesting owner and kept things lively. Anyway,
that's a very diplomatic way to put it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Well, Dick, what's coming up on Rattle and Hum Sports then?
Well, we've just another exciting week here with the Reds coming in this weekend, and of course the Yankees. So we'll be following those two series very closely.
Outstanding, and it's great to see the Rangers playing good baseball again and back on the winning track there. Dick, thanks very much for coming on with us as always.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Dic Humphrey, covering the Texas Rangers for Rattle and Hum Sports. I'm Bryan Houston. This is a Rattle and Hum Sports podcast. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.